moments of like what I think and my opinions, but always in a way of like supporting the cause, than actually saying that was that day that I was there, you know, because it's not my thing anyway. To trip for like do an entertainment thing or whatever. So and what a topic, eh? So relevant.
So relevant.
Is it something that is part of any work that you do? Like, because I read something about the cacao.
Cacao, but not mushrooms. Like I've used mushrooms, like going on my own sort of like journeys, like very rarely. But no, I don't use it as part of like any of my events or offerings or anything. That I don't know enough about it. To feel comfortable offering it, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense. 100%. Yeah. What's up with the cacao? What, like, I've never tried. I understand, but
you should know about cacao. Come on,
take me through. I know about cacao because it's a big thing in Brazil, and I understand the great properties of it. But like, I don't know if the word is a fad, but like, it became a thing. Right, it became a big thing of like the ritual. But I've never done it. So what is it when you were invited? Let's say if you invited me for a cacao, both. What's in the thing that is so beneficial? And if you go
it's
to
cacao.
Both, tell me both.
Well, first there's cacao. That's the benefit. I mean, like if you look at cacao from a therapeutic point, you've got polyphenols, which is really great for like oxidative stress. You've got tryptophan and tryptamine, which is like precursors to serotonin. You've got, if I can remember the word, which I can't.
It will come to you.
But it's basically like a vasodilator, so it helps to open up the blood vessels, increase
so that's why people say that it opens the heart up.
So both on an energetic level and on a scientific level is opening the heart. So like cacao is a very like ancient medicine. I mean, it's like from about 3,500 BC. It's like if you look at the temple of like Monte Grande, that's where like you have the oldest sort of artifacts that have cacao, which is within those artifacts. And so that's about what
we need to come back to this.
We are in this. Tell me more.
But it depends. Like if you go to a cacao ceremony, depending on the facilitator that you're getting, it could be like a session that involves cacao but is focused more on breath work. Some people integrate it into their practice in that way. Right. Some people use it very intentionally and actually like connecting with the medicine of mama cacao and like sitting with the intention of what you're wanting to bring forth and allowing her to actually like almost for your two energies to work together in she's a feminine energy that works in sort of like nurturing the heart, nurturing the womb space as well, which is really interesting. So the temple of Monte Grande, when you look at it, it's like a spiral. And in Andean cosmovision, the spiral is representative to the snake, and the snake is like the underworld. It's your connection to your ancestors. It's connection to those before you, to the past. And also that spiral, if you look at the temple from like a bird's eye perspective, it has like sort of two legs and almost like a head, and they say that it's like a woman, and that snake or that spiral is the womb space. It's like the portal for creation, for life, for death, and so it's seen as like this feminine medicine that's used for connecting into your heart, into your womb, into the body, and being more present with self.
Wow. That's
goes
beautiful.
Deep. Yes.
That's beautiful.
For people who don't, because would you call it a holistic approach? Like if you go to one of those ceremonies looking for some sort of healing or help or support, you would call it holistic, right?
Holistic or alternative. Or, whatever.
And then we're talking about energy, obviously, but also I liked what you said from a medical perspective. and from a spiritual perspective, it makes sense. So that takes me to that classic thing of like, well, these medicines make sense because that's where everything comes from. That's nature. Are we breaking these barriers? Do you think it's something that is evolving and it's getting bigger in our society as a whole, or like the pharmaceutical industry still plays like a massive role in dumbing down the population and not allowing? Because it always sounds like, oh, hippie vibes, you know, like, oh, those hippie people. But no, we're talking about proper things that will make you feel better. It's not just sit down and breathe.
Totally. I think that pharmaceuticals have lost the way of actually understanding that indigenous medicines have always been around. They've been around a lot longer than pharmaceuticals have, and there's a lot of benefit in them. Pharmaceuticals have their place, but I have my own personal opinion on pharmaceuticals as well, and I think they're handed out like candy, and they're very much overprescribed. But you know, I think if we actually took ourselves back to integrating alternative or holistic medicine with Western pharmacology, we would actually find more benefit for our society, for our communities, for individuals, if we looked at it from a holistic perspective. Because before the likes of, say, for example, antidepressants came along, and they had really great sort of readings, let's call it, like they could see that they had like a lot of people were being really well supported from them. Prior to some of those things, we still incorporated things in a holistic perspective, and then they almost were like, oh well, this can be the solution to everything, and they placed this on like the top of a hill and let everything else underneath sort of like crumble.
Well, it's the same in Pacific culture. We have kava, right? And kava has the same properties as both Prozac and anesthetic. So it numbs your body and kind of gives you a nice open mind. And traditionally, kava was used by chiefs to help communicate with open their bodies up so they could communicate with the spirit world, right?
Yeah.
And then over time, it's kind of been watered down and become this thing that tourists go and drink in Fiji. And that's cool, but the original purpose, and it's the same as, you know, cacao as well, right? So it's different ways of opening up the body and opening up the mind.
Totally. Yeah.
And my apologies, I didn't realize we're live.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I just assumed because we just get talking.
We're
so
rocking.
it's like,
Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Robertson and Blair Murray. You haven't touched JT the claps yet, that we have a button for claps. We'll get there, JT. Don't worry, we got it. We got it.
But what a great way to start the conversation.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's cool, man. So can you...
I also remembered the name. It's theobromine. Theobromine is the vasodilator, so it works very much like caffeine without the sort of like the drop. So you get that peak of energy, but with theobromine, it's like a slow burn. Where caffeine is like, oh, now I feel like shit, and I've got to take a nap, and now I need another coffee, you know? Like cacao has caffeine in it, but it's very minuscule in comparison.
Man, you know, like we often talk about coffee on the show because that's actually my point. How powerful an industry can be, right? Because it's still going. For how long, you know? And it's probably one of the most present drinks in people's lives.
Totally.
In how many countries? Like we're talking about a huge amount of the world population that consumes coffee. Next minute you come here and tell us that there are so many, well, you're talking about one, but I'm sure that there are so many other herbs and substances that would give us the same kick with more benefits, and maybe, you know, like, I don't know, it could be even nicer to drink than coffee.
I like cacao in its rawest form when you make it is very earthy. Like I think people struggle with that the first time. They're like, oh, you know, they're like, oh, okay, dirt. Or like, you know, or like, oh, this is very bitter, you know.
Yes.
But it's like anything new. Like when you try it and you actually have it ongoingly, that sort of the complexities of the flavor. Like you don't, like now these days, I don't even consider it to be like earthy or bitter or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Cacao next time.
Yeah.
Altbays show, cacao ceremony.
Yeah.
That would be cool because Mellow Downs does the one with Kava, right? Do you know Mellow Downs, the rapper?
Yes.
So he does his podcast with people drinking Kava.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We should bring some up or get Stu up here to do a proper ceremony one day. We'll make that happen.
Sounds good. Man, Adam, again, thank you so much for coming to the show. Can you take me through a little bit of your journey? Because I read some beautiful words on your description and I started researching them and then I realized, well, I might as well listen from the man, from the source. So Neurosomatic, that's one of the main things that you keep on in your socials, and a lot of work with trauma, and I guess a lot of work understanding different therapies.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit of what you actually do and your specialties?
Yeah, totally. I guess like to explain for anyone who isn't familiar with like the term neurosomatic, it's sort of simple when you break it down into two words, neuro being the brain, somatics being the body. So it's just basically like the connection between the brain and the body, right? Ultimately, like I feel like we're in a society where we have been taught to be very analytical, that it's all based on our IQ, how much we can achieve and all of those things. And there is a deep disconnection with the body. And so for me, it's finding the relationship between the two and finding that balance between, because I mean, again, it's that holistic view. We had to look at ourselves as a vessel that has so many different facets to it, right? We're very multidimensional. So that's what that means. I am trained in about 8 different modalities. So I started at a very young age. So when I was 14, I did Reiki, if anyone knows what that is.
Yep.
And then by 16, I was like a master practitioner in Reiki. I have done breathwork. I have done reflexology. I have done yin yoga. I have done numerology. I have done havening techniques. Sometimes I forget what I've done.
Quite a few.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's quite a few there. So I use all of those as part of my tool belt and helping clients.
Do they complement each other, or as you tap into a new one, you realize that it's a completely new realm?
No, I definitely feel like they complement each other. I mean, they're all related in some form, shape, or way to the human experience, right? Like if you look at reflexology and you look at the reflex points and you look at how certain reflex points correlate to different organs within the body, and it's like, okay, so say for example, someone's having an issue with their stomach, like massaging this particular reflex point could have, some stimulation to that part of the body or help with whatever's going on there. And then you could bring in, say, for example, breath work, and like what we know is that the nervous system is directly linked to like how the gut responds, right? So if like you are incredibly stressed, you might like be really tense, and if you're really tense, you might like feel really tense in the gut, or literally might be tense, like you might have constipation, like who knows, you know what I mean? So breath work might help in that area as well, and bringing that in and helping to actually like calm the nervous system in order to just open up.
Were you tapping into those things because you were looking for some sort of healing yourself, or you were just curious? That's always a cool one, isn't it?
So how I got into everything, I guess, I've always been alternative, spiritual, whatever you sort of want to like call it, from a very young age. But at the age of 12, like 16 days before my 13th birthday, my brother passed away. And he passed away, he took his own life, and that was like very much like a whole new realm to a 12-year-old, you know, like it's not something that I don't like is really necessarily spoken about in society that much. And I feel like then you don't learn about those sorts of things, and it's a very taboo subject, which it shouldn't be.
No.
And like mental health is incredibly important, and again, that plays into the whole pharmaceutical sort of side of things because of the way that my brother passed. It made me go down looking at alternatives of how people can connect to themselves, to spirit, to Wairoa, to anything and everything that's part of this experience. So that's sort of what led me into doing all of these things, and now I'm here.
Oh, amazing. And with that event, if you don't mind me kind of going there with your brother passing, and I also lost a friend at a young age at about 14 in a car accident. And my way at that time, I started to learn meditation, right? And it was very foreign. It was, none of it was brought up. I had nothing in my house or my family that made me want to do that, but for a way it was me connecting to my body and also to the memory of my friend. And so I always think that friend of mine lives on, right, in my memories. And so being able to learn how to meditate at a young age, that gave me that kind of peace and that space of myself to be able to keep that connection with him and keep that memory alive with him. That's so beautiful. I definitely feel like it's so different for so many people. Like it's fascinating that you share that experience. Like I know someone who shared an experience of almost not enjoying revisiting that or keeping them alive in that sense because it doesn't feel reassuring for them. You know what I mean? And so it's going through the process of grief and going through the process of loss is a very individualistic process. And I don't think there is a right or wrong way to do that. But I hear you, and like the meditation being like a form of keeping that person alive. I think for me, it was very much like, connecting deeper into like my spiritual senses and my spiritual self was a way to connect to my brother who is no longer here in that physical form. That's what I was kind of alluding at, but without using those words.
We have religion. We have religion that takes us to one side. We have skeptical atheists, agnostics, whatever you want to call it, that take us to a completely different side. And then how do we serve? Are you religious? Do you have any sort of actual religious belief?
Not religious beliefs, no.
But and then in this space of spirituality, as you said, not in a physical form, what gives you peace or what helps you to understand or grasp some sort of understanding about death?
Wow.
Was I too gentle? I didn't mean to. Shit. Let's talk about apple juice.
Everyone's waiting for Leo to twerk.
So just hold on, Rick. Can you just repeat that again?
I was just thinking because again, what I'm used to, because we bring different people to this show, and sometimes I like to talk to very religious people. Because they sound like that's us. That's me. And I'm so grounded in this idea that I'm all good. Some people might say ignorance is bliss if they don't believe it, but it looks that person is all good with that belief. Even if for me it's bullshit, taking my judgment out of the game, I just see someone very relaxed. Oh yeah, go heaven, it's all good, it's waiting. I'm like, oh, you look very calm about that idea. You're very good at it. And then on the other side, you have some people who are completely the opposite. They're like, nah, there's nothing and I don't care. It's just nothing. And I'm like, nothing doesn't make you go nuts. Or thinking that there's a nothing, there must be something, right? I don't know. And then more spiritual, I would say. People who are like, oh, we're not in the physical form anymore. And I'm just tapping into what you guys were talking about, the physical form.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and getting into that.
I see it, so I see it as let's sort of look at it from the perspective of cacao, right? It's there's the spiritual aspect and there's the scientific aspect, right? So when it comes to spirituality, I look at it as scientifically everything is energy. right? Everything is like atoms that are like fucking all around us doing things all the time and whatnot. Nothing is created, nothing is destroyed. Everything is always like transformed, is transcended into something else, right? So to me, I am a soul in a physical like vessel. This is like my chosen like body for this experience. I've chosen this experience.
I like the chosen word.
Yeah, like I've chosen this experience. I've chosen the things that I venture on and whatever reasons are for that. Like my personal belief is like everything that I have free will in this human experience, but it's almost like you could see it as I can choose this road or I can choose this road, but either way it's going to lead me to this destination. But everything that I experience is already pre-programmed for me by myself outside of my human body, if that makes sense. Yes. So like my brother passing, I'm like, okay, that's like, it's okay because like there's a reason for that. It's led me to this point in my life where I'm actually serving people with a purpose because of that. You know, like there's reasons that all of these experiences have happened because it's led me to this point in my life. But it's also like I have free will. I can choose what I do with that as well. Like I can choose whether or not I like decide to just throw it all up in the air and give up and do nothing. And you know, that all comes with a human experience of trauma and, you know, all of those actual physical needs that need to be met within a human being. But yeah, it's a spiritual experience as well.
Isn't there something powerful being a human and living with purpose? And it's a conversation I've had with a few people recently, is, you know, if we don't have some kind of purpose to what we're doing with our lives, we just ruminate and we're just in that kind of almost like a rat cage.
Totally.
You know, going backwards and forwards. And so that's really cool to hear, you know, just the way you describe that and also bringing in that purpose. And I was wondering as well, I mean, you know, you have all these different modalities and you bring them together. So the way that you present that, is it intuitive to you, or how, you know, like you might be dealing with a group of people or an individual? Is it an intuitive thing because you've got all these different modalities?
Yeah, I work very intuitively. It's funny because one of my tutors was like, oh, Adam, like I noticed that you work like super intuitively. Like you don't necessarily go into like a session with a client and say, cool, this is how it's like, this is what we're going to do. Like, this is how it's going to roll. Like, it's almost like, let me know what's going on and let's like see like, to me it's focused on the client and getting the best sort of outcome, and that comes from whatever you're using based on your intuition and what feels right for the client themselves and you being able to offer that. Yeah.
When you said something about regardless of the path that I choose, it is what it is, it's going to take me there. I was connecting that with a lot of the mental health issues that a lot of us go through. And although I'm not a fan of Sadhguru, like I just listen to the stuff that he says every now and then, he said something interesting that I was listening to a podcast recently. There was something like, but it's always a choice, the way that you're going to react to something. It's your choice. And then I was thinking, wow, it's a very easy way to solve all the mental health problems in the world by saying, oh, you can choose to let that affect you or not. Like the reaction is inevitable. You're going to feel anger sometimes and you're going to feel sad, but like, are you going to dwell? And it's, you know, obviously quoting him in my own words. But then I was thinking, then it's the toolbox that you got to understand that concept and apply. And that's why so many people struggle with the process, right? Because the idea, it's quite simple. Like, oh, I'm feeling like this, but I know that it's going to pass. But some people don't have that click, right? Of understanding, yeah, this is going to pass. And then we start dwelling on an issue for too long, and that starts to damage you. Am I painting a picture of like why the mental health work is so important in these therapies and these different ways of approaching? Because one might work for you, but that one might not, and you've got to find something that gives you that toolbox.
Absolutely. Totally. I get what you mean, and I think it's again, there's so many layers and factors to it as well. It's like with mental health, it's like people can get really stuck within parts of their life or experiences that they've gone through that, you know, there's now trauma, and that trauma is like on a loop. You know, it's like this constant thing that they're suffering from. Sometimes people get comfortable in that.
Yes.
And it's not that they do that intentionally. It's just the fact that it's like any sort of abuse. It's like if you have suffered from any form of abuse in your life, you're more likely to get into an abusive relationship. You're more likely to lead yourself down that path because that is something in a childhood, for example, that you have felt really familiar with and really comfortable with, that actually in that moment felt safe because you didn't, like, as a child, you still wanted that connection, like that attachment is what a child needs. That attachment is really healthy, right? So it's no different when you start going through certain experiences, whether or not it's pre 7 years old or like after 7 years old. We can still get caught within those cycles that become comfortable, and then we don't want to move. And then we feel like we're trying, but we're actually not necessarily trying enough. But it's not like, it's not placing the blame on anyone. It's just finding alternatives to what we have tried and being open-minded enough to try an array of different things, right? Because like I know people who have been put on, say, for example, antidepressants, and then they feel worse on antidepressants, but like that's apparently all that's supposed to work and help support you. But then it's also our system. Like I want to like just reiterate, a lot of the issue is with our system. A lot of the issue is with the fact that we actually do not help individuals in this state through alternative therapies that would be really beneficial for them. I remember when I was going through my concussion that I was speaking about earlier, and it was like there was alternative therapies out there that would have been more beneficial for me, but they are not seen as scientific enough. For that to be funded or to be or to help me. And so then I have to go out and resource that for myself. And for some people, those resources are limited and aren't there. And then, but then it's also, where do we find that line between regulating the nervous system enough to understand that the priority is our health, to understand that the priority is our healing. Like that is the only thing that really matters, right?
You get more money, but then you have to pay for all the treatments to be healthy.
But ultimately it's also like you could get again caught up within that I don't have the resources of it, right? Okay, how do we work with the nervous system where you're not pushing yourself out too far outside your comfort zone, that you're dysregulating it because then you're spending hundreds of dollars on this thing that you can't keep up with and manage? How do we ensure that you're maybe putting money aside or you're doing certain things that is ultimately going to support, because then you can go to this therapy which maybe you felt like you can't resource, but if you're putting $20 aside per week, that's maybe something that you can get. You know, it's all just finding it's a balancing act.
It's a balance. Go Blair, go Blair.
Yeah, and you know, just bringing to that point as well, because society and our phones are so busy, our nervous system, and my teacher once said to me, the more attention you pay to something, the more it rewires your nervous system, right? And so we're in this constant battle, and we're looking at these reels going, oh, okay, this is what I feel, or I'm ADHD because I associate with that, but we're not actually digging deep, and it's just like absolutely messing our nervous systems.
Totally.
It's fascinating. And have we got some questions?
We got a message. We got some comments. So Caroline Cassidy, such an awesome chat. People struggle with process as society has made normal humans' reactions something not okay. We have become to rely on outside support to dull or avoid our feelings. Thanks, Caroline. And Fauzi says, great chat. Adam looks like a lot like Leo and vice versa.
Boom. Wasn't expecting that one.
Thanks, Fauzi. It is a compliment, bro. I don't know if it's a compliment for Adam. Yeah. But it is a compliment. Yeah, my man. Yeah, this thing with looking for these answers and yeah, because that's the funny thing. You can find yourself in a crazy addictive situation with something bad or something that sounds amazing, that sounds great for you. Oh, the therapy, I'm healing. And then you're boring. Then you just living in that world of trying to always find something, and you're not. You're just chasing your own tail, thinking that you're looking for something great in the great things, but you're not understanding. And a lot of people will go for other sources, like they're going to have a cigarette or a coffee or an extra. Escapism.
I love escapism. But no, it's not good.
Yeah.
Do you have your own vices? You were talking about sugar before?
Super familiar with escapism. I mean, it used like I can see both sides of the coin. I can see addiction as escapism because I used to smoke, I used to drink, I used to gamble, I used to do all of those things because I didn't know how to feel what was going on, or when I felt what was going on, it felt extremely overwhelming. And that came from a deep sense of not knowing how to love myself, right? I can see how people can also get caught up within, and this is something that I talk to clients about when they're going into the field of personal development or healing. Is there can be a point within your healing journey. What's really important is integration.
Yes.
Right? Because if you don't integrate, you're always going to continue to seek something.
Yes.
And that seeking might be the fact that you're like, oh, I reacted this way. What does that mean about me? Oh my God. And you start creating narratives, and you start creating, you start re-traumatizing yourself through personal development. Right? But when you have periods of personal development followed by periods of integration, followed by periods of personal development, you realize you don't need to seek anything. It's just having more self-awareness. And that self-awareness, you have to have self-awareness where you also have the self-awareness to know that you're then overdoing it, if that makes sense.
Yes. The word spiritual materialism comes to mind as well. When I've done it myself. I'm a self-confessed retreat junkie. I love going into retreat and taking time out from this busy life. But then it also becomes a point of view where I'm going in there and I have traumas from my childhood. And recently I had to actually go back and do some therapy because I realized, I was almost using the fact that, I can go and sit and be tranquil and sit in meditation for 3 or 4 days, not the whole time, but, go to a 3 or 4 day retreat, come back and I feel bliss and I'm happy, but I actually haven't processed properly what's going on underneath. And so it's like, I'm kind of like the spiritual, almost materialist going on, but I still have this trauma issues, and so it's just recently I actually just went back to therapy because they came back up and I was like, okay, I know what that is. And I need to figure out a way to address it. But what you're just saying then in terms of looking at, you do that period of personal development integration and the personal development integration. And I think that really hits a bell with me because a lot of times I've gone and done the personal development, but I haven't integrated it. And I've just run out of a retreat and gone back to work, gone back to town, gone back drinking.
What is it then? Is it a discipline process or
integration?
Yeah.
I feel like it's just I feel like it's just a period of being. Right? It's just like I could work with someone, or I could ask for support and have support from someone, and having things reflected to me and bringing more self-awareness and going into different traumas and healing those experiences and doing all of those. And a period of integration for me is a period of just not needing anything outside of myself in that moment, and just being. And, you know, it could be just spending some time in solitude with yourself. It could be, it's almost like allowing for everything that is being processed to actually be processed, right? It's like in order to heal a loop, you've got to allow the process time. But if you're constantly, say, for example, going from retreat, all you're doing is constantly, like, I don't know, diving into things that you're not actually letting yourself process that. You're just like, oh, okay, now I've got to do this and I've got to do that. It's that doing mindset instead of that being mindset, which again is very much part of like the society that we're in, where it's like everything has to be done rather than just be in the space.
It's like being in the experience as opposed to being in the narrative of what's going on in your mind.
Yeah.
Is why I see that. And that hits a bell big time. And one thing, Adam, that I think is really important in therapy as well is movement. And, you know, whether that's yoga or exercise or walking, the science is all there, right? And, you know, one thing I'm so fascinated on is your approach on that by incorporating therapy into twerking. And from my brain, I'm sitting there going, oh, you know, that's a good form of body movement. But can you explain a bit about that? And ease into that. I'm just so fascinated.
It's cool because we really dove into the brain and so many cool things. And I was thinking about that, you know, let's talk about the body. Let's talk about the movement now. So yes, please. Absolutely.
I guess movement is an important part of life. It's an important part of our physical vessel. It's an important part for our mental health. For our emotional health, for digesting, for processing things. And if we look at it in the nature of intellect versus feeling, I look at the brain as like a masculine structure, and I look at the body as a feminine entity, right? So like we have this, we all have like feminine and masculine within us, and I look at the two parts almost like that. We have the analytical, and then we have the digestion, we have the processing, right? But when you look at trauma, and you look at how trauma is like encoded through the brain, but then the process in which it almost like, because we are, if not the only species or one of the only species in the world that doesn't, like you could see like a gazelle or a zebra or something get chased by a lion, and then you'll notice that afterwards, like they shake their body. Right? Has anyone seen that?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, have you guys seen that? I'm like, sure you've watched like some sort of wildlife thing. We don't do that, right? So whether or not it's like we're being chased by someone or we're not being chased by someone, but there's this increase in cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline, when we have those like stress hormones that are flood in our body, and we're taking in the context and the complex content, and we're taking in the content and all of those things, and we're trying to process this through an experience that we're faced with, and it typically tends to be like, well, depending obviously what experience, there's a sort of encoding that we need to go through, which I'm happy to take you guys through what that looks like as well. But if we don't allow our body to process that sort of flood, we're not letting it go. We go into like almost like a state of freeze. Some people have that, obviously that flight state, that fight state. But even if we fight it out and we get it out of our system, there typically tends to still be this tense feeling, right? Because there's still all of those like stress hormones that are going on. And then we'll kind of just go like, okay, and then we'll just like get on with our day or our life or whatever it might be without actually shaking it out and letting it go. But yeah, when it comes to trauma, there's a certain process that it has to go through in order for it to be like a traumatic experience. So when trauma is encoded, there has to be an event, and the event has to be threatening to the person. There has to be like a perceived level of threat. There has to be like, so that's like tick number one. There has to be a meaning. So the meaning has to be like a personal loss, which could be like a person in your life, physical loss, which is like potentially like the loss of a limb or something like that. Or there is like the loss of, what's the word? Almost like your stature, like the way that you identify yourself. So say, for example, you're the queen, and then all of a sudden, like your country hates you, and then you feel like, oh my God, like, you know, that could be seen as like something that, like a public loss, if that makes sense. And then we go through, so it's called like Emily. And then L is for like the landscape. So we had to look at the landscape of the brain, and we had to look at like the person's experiences that they've already been faced with. If they've already been through particular traumatic experiences in a short period of time, they're more likely to have a vulnerable landscape over a more resilient landscape, someone who's maybe built up that resilience or not had something necessarily happen to them that, you know, has felt like very threatening in a long time and has allowed for a process. And then the final one, if all three of those happen without the fourth, typically we have a better chance of recovery without it being encoded within the system. The last one, which is really important and is what typically encodes the trauma within the system, is inescapability. So there has to be a sense of physical or perceived inescapability, helplessness. I can't get out of this. Whatever that looks like, I can't get out of this because I seem to constantly be going through this cycle, or I can't get out of this because I'm stuck in a room, whatever it might be. And so that's encoded, and you know, that's encoded within the amygdala. We have all of those stress hormones. Those things then produce it within our within our muscles. That trauma is then stored within particular areas of our body. Typically for women, that tends to be within the hips, within the sacral, within the womb space. And then when we look at the likes of twerking, that's why it's so important.
Ding.
Tell me more about twerking. Just stop there. We finally got to the cherry. We made it. Yeah, okay.
There's so much more to that.
I'm sure. Twerking in Brazil, probably one of the most common ways of dancing. People really engage in twerking. It's a country where we are, I hope this is the right term that I'm using, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, like sexualized from a very young age. So television and all that idea of women being a product and all the shakes and all the things. So that was the funny thing of this conversation, because I know that for a lot of people who will see this from Brazil, because friends watch and that we're building some viewership there as well, people who can speak English, and I'm like, oh, they will laugh, because if you talk about twerking as a therapy, it might not connect for a lot of people, you know? In a way, it's cool because it becomes also a political act, because the lower classes will use that as like, you keep oppressing us, but this is us. This is who we are.
This is our booty.
Yeah. So there's this beautiful element to it, which
is like its nature and its purest form.
Yes, yeah. But you know what I mean? Like the sexualization, is that a word? Sexualization of the act can play against. So when it comes to that, when it comes to the public in New Zealand that see what you're doing, or even internationally, how do they welcome your idea? And how do you explain? You just explained beautifully, but I mean, just to make sure that they're like, yeah. No, we're talking about something that is great for you in every way.
Yeah. I mean, there's a sexual aspect to it, absolutely, because like if you look at like the sacral center, the sacral center is all about pleasure. And that's not just pleasure in a sexual sense, that's pleasure of all things to do with life. That's pleasure in what you feel when you drink this juice and like it touches your lips and you're like, oh, that delicious flavor, you know? It's the center of manifestation. It's the center of creativity. It's our life force. It's the center of birth and death and creation and all of those things, right?
Yes.
And so there is an element of sexuality to it because it also stores like our sexual organs. It also stores like and harnesses that sexual energy. And there's nothing wrong with that sexual energy because that sexual energy can be used in a way and utilized in a way which is really beneficial for people. I mean, that sexual energy is incredibly potent. I mean, look, it creates literally children. Like how like there's a conception that happens and then all of a sudden like you have this baby, you know, like you have this human. But also the sexualization of it is also a narrative that has been created as well. Okay. So it's a narrative that if you look back to where sort of like, and it wasn't called necessarily twerking, where its origins are from, but like if you look at West Africa, a lot of twerking movements were used in celebratory processes. They were used at weddings. They were used as part of celebration, part of community and community like coming together. It was that freedom, like you're saying, that rebellion, like this is my expression. This is who I am. This is my body. This is like, this is how we convey that to the world. And it was actually through religion in which they didn't like the fact that women were using movements that I would say they found to be quite enticing because they couldn't control themselves and therefore, and because they can't control themselves, who do they have to shut down? They have to shut women down, or they have to shut people down who are then partaking in movements which look potentially sexual or you know, could go somewhere or be something or whatever. But yeah, it's fascinating when you look at sort of like the origins of twerking coming from West Africa and through the transatlantic slave trade. It was then moved into the Americas. Well, I mean, the slaves were moved into the Americas and the culture within, you know, were moved with them, but also suppressed because of those reasons, because it was like seemed like you know, let's enticing let's not do that, like let's suppress them. Anytime that you want to control someone, you control their body, you control their voice, and you have control over them, right? And so
religion's good at that. Sorry, I didn't say that.
Drop the mic with
so then through the movement, you kind of have like 300 years of you know, the transatlantic slave trade. But at some point you then, and this is just my personal belief, is I think it was about the 1860s, you have burlesque that came over to America, right? And burlesque had those bumps and those grinds and sort of like the quick hits and things like that. And I feel like twerking, because it actually comes from like the bounce movement of like the late 80s, 1990s in New Orleans. I feel like it's a combination of that cultural sort of like movements that they used in the celebration, that they used in community, mixed with some of that sort of like burlesque style things and created into like the bounce movement, and that's sort of like how twerking was created. But I see it as a form of, if you look at its origins, what is it? It's a form of connection, it's a form of community, it's a form of expression and self-liberation. And that's what I want people to understand and connect with, is when you're coming to a class, yes, you're potentially harnessing forms of sexual energy, because I've had people go, you know what, I'm going to go from here to home and I'm going to get some, you know, and I'm like, amazing, get it, like, you know, use it, utilize it in whatever way.
Sending their partners to you, like, you do your magic out of that.
Yeah, like, you know, and it's cool. It's cool that people can feel that. Yeah, but it's also like amazing when you look at like the nature of the movement. That's what I really want people to harness. It's the nature of the movement, and to understand that if it is also a form of self-liberation and a form of expression, through that we are gaining confidence through the suppressed society that we've created for all of us, to be honest, but particularly for women as well, you know. Does that sort of answer your question?
Man, there's so much there.
We can go for hours here. When it comes to the chakras, can you take me through that as well?
Yeah.
Because I read on your websites, but again, I started and I'm like, nah, I'll ask Adam and he will give me the rundown.
You want me to take you through all of them?
That would be cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have our root chakra, which is very much connected to our groundedness, our place within this world. It's like our connection to Papa Tuanuku, you know, it's our connection to Mother Earth, and our ancestry. And then we have our sacral, which is all about sort of like our manifestation, our creativity. It's our pleasure portal. It's our portal of harnessing that sensual energy and that playfulness, right? We have our solar plexus, which is all about our personal power. It's all about our self-belief, how we believe ourselves to be, and how we show up, our self-confidence, our self-love, all of those aspects of things. We have our heart chakra, which is ultimately about the outward expression of love. Like our internal self-love often comes from that solar plexus. Our outward expression of love often comes from our heart chakra. So the compassion, the forgiveness for self, but also for others, the way that we look at other people and we can bring in that compassion without that judgment. And one thing that I loved that you said, Leo, was that you mentioned that on this podcast you have people with conflicting opinions and conflicting perspectives, and I love that because I feel like we need more of that in this world. Definitely. You know, like I love when I can sit down with someone and they can disagree with what I say, and I can see them and I can say, cool, there's like no judgment here. Like I still have compassion for you as a person, even though I may not necessarily agree, but it also helps to open up my perspectives. Yes. Like, you know what I mean? Like we need more of that in our lives and our society. Our throat chakra is all to do with our expression, our self-expression, and the way that we verbalize things, but also being mindful about how we do that, right? So some people can get really like, oh, I'm going to express myself and fuck you because I think that like you're a dick. And I'm like, that's not like healthy form of self-expression. Yes. Like self-expression is being mindful about how we communicate things, right? It's being aware enough to know that we could say something in that moment, but how are we going to say it in a way which is going to get the best results from another person, right?
Yep.
Reading
the room.
Yeah, totally.
Reading the room. Yes.
We've got like our third eye, which is all about our intuition. It's all about our spiritual connection to it's really interesting because part of intuition comes from our primal instinct, but part of intuition also comes from like our spiritual wisdom that we've gained from over lifetimes or over things that we didn't even know we had the information or the resource of, that just typically tends to like show up out of nowhere, you know? I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. You could be in the middle of something and then you're just like, oh, this thing dropped.
Yeah.
And you're like, where did that come from?
That almost a feeling of like what they'd say is deja vu.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just like, oh. Yeah.
A resource of information that's available to you. And then your crown is all about your connection to your divinity, to the higher self, to the higher consciousness, to the collective consciousness, and also to whatever you believe or don't believe in. Yeah.
What are we moving there? What are we working on when we are doing the actual, like the action of twerking? What's happening to our body?
Yeah.
What's happening to our energetic?
Yeah. So typically, like with twerking is it's like a full workout. I mean, especially with Twerkwerk, because we're not only just utilizing twerking, we're utilizing breath work as well.
Wow.
Right. So there's like multiple components to it. So in that instance, you're working the whole shebang. But with twerking movements, typically, because you're isolating the movements of your hips and your pelvis, so on and so forth, you are using like that. You're tapping into that root and that sacral energy. Yeah.
Right. And for you to get into for someone to get into the physical action, like, does it take a lot of practice for people to understand? Because like you can move your back and you can move your neck and you're actually not getting the bum rise and everything. So physically, like how challenging it is. Can anyone just rock up into a class and just start practicing?
Totally. Anyone can rock up to a class and come along. Like, I mean, you don't like, it's so funny because people are like, I don't know how to twerk. And I'm like, honestly, you don't need to know how to twerk. Like we're not here to be like those people that you see on like the videos that are like going into the splits and like shaking their ass like that. And if you can do that, fantastic. But as someone who instructs those classes, I can absolutely fucking not do that, and we will not be doing that. Like, I am not here to break my pelvis or like, you know, rip my groin. But it's like anyone can do it. But with practice encourages the essence of the person to connect deeper into their body. So again, this comes back to a whole like patriarchal societal thing where people have become so disconnected from their bodies because that's how we've been conditioned to believe that we have to be. And so most people come to a class and don't necessarily know how to move because not because they can't move, but because when we're disconnected from the body, we hold a lot of tension in the body. And because we're not dealing with trauma, we hold a lot of tension in the body. And combining those two things, we typically can't move.
Is that where breath work comes into it? Because from my experience, you know, the like sometimes your body, you can have parts in your body that are completely frozen. I guess from that you can twerk a little bit better? Or?
Totally. It's also a sort of like working with that, with the brain-body connection as well, harnessing the power of the two, because some people are like, oh, okay, I need to breathe here, but then I need to move here. And then I'm like, okay, let's just like come out of the brain and back into the body, right? Let's just breathe. And if you fuck up a breath, it's okay. And if you fuck up a movement, it's okay. It's really just about connecting. But the breath work is really important because depending on what type of breath work that we're doing, some breath work is about really creating safety within the body. It's really about like often in our classes that we do, we start with gentle rocking. And then we start with diaphragmatic breath. And diaphragmatic breath is like, right? And as we're rocking and we're breathing, we're telling the body it's safe enough. We're telling the nervous system it's okay to relax, right? It's okay, we can just switch off. We don't have to use our mind. Like, we can just be here in this present moment. And then sometimes we might get into like some full on more different movements, and we might do some more circular sort of breath work, like which is all about increasing the adrenaline and the epinephrine and those stress hormones within our body. But the beauty of doing that for ourselves, rather than it being an external source, is that we're then building resilience within our bodies to adapt to stressful environments and situations and how we respond to those, right? So when we create stress hormones within our body, and we can learn how to respond to that for ourselves, rather than it being from an outside influence, if that makes sense. So there's different components of breath for different reasons. But it is really about genuinely just connecting with the body and telling the body that it's safe enough to move or guide it this way. And typically in a Twerkwerk class, we say be led by the breath and follow with the movement. Right?
Sounds like life. Because we forget that we breathe, we forget the power of the breathing, right?
Yeah.
So what you were saying before, would that be a good tip for someone, for example, going into an important meeting at work that you were struggling with and you were a bit anxious, or you just have to talk to someone and you have to ask for something? The diaphragm, how did you say the word? Diaphragmatic breathing. Is that a good technique for someone to just like try to tap into a more relaxing state of mind? Just
totally.
Like
anything that typically where you're breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, or in through the nose and out through the nose, depending on the length, again, that's a whole nother thing as well. But typically breathing through the nose creates more of a parasympathetic response, which is like your rest and digest, just telling the body that it's safe enough to move or to be.
Have you read a book called Breath by James Nestor?
No.
He's a scientist, and he actually, you got me onto that.
Yeah, I think so. I talked about it on the show that you came, right?
Yeah, and he actually taped his mouth for 2 weeks as an experiment, and just breathed through his nose.
And then he does the opposite.
It's incredibly important as well, because for anyone out here as well, like if you breathe through your mouth, especially at night, you're more likely to have an earlier expiry date. Your stress typically is more because breathing through your mouth activates your stress hormones. There's so many benefits to breathing through your nose. So I always say to people, if you can breathe through your nose and there's not actually something like stopping you, even at night, you can gently just tape your mouth and get into the habit, because
I've been doing it for a while since I read the book. Gotta find the right tape. Especially when you have a
masking tape.
That's true. You gotta find the right tape, because you don't want to breathe into that.
Your mustache.
And you don't want to breathe into that glue. So like there's something with the lips as well. That's what I've been paying attention to.
The sort of the tape that comes with like those first aid kits, I think they typically tend to be quite good.
That's right.
Yeah.
It helped me a lot understanding that cold showers and the breathing, and just taking time to breathe. Sometimes, especially for automatic responses with people that you like and you feel comfortable with, you're likely to just give that on their face, and then remembering to just remind yourself to take a minute, or 5 seconds, whatever you can. But just thinking about, I'll try to calm myself for this. Really change the game, man.
Yeah.
I love that, Leo, because it's
hard, man.
I overshare, especially when I see someone that I like, and I'm like, I want to tell them everything that's been going on. And sometimes it's like, well, they're probably in a different headspace and they don't need to hear your whole 2 weeks there, Blair. So I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's why you see me so many times closing my eyes, because when I close my eyes and when I focus just in this moment, I can center myself rather than being within
bright lights.
the external sort of realm.
I think there's a thing as well with expecting people to be quick. People don't have time. So you start to engage in a conversation and it's always the same questions. And when someone starts to get into something a little bit deeper, you grab the phone or you look to the window and then you as a speaker, you start to feel bad. You're like, oh, do I carry on? And some people obviously don't even realize that. But this thing with the urgency of life stops us from having great moments. Most of the time is someone saying something very simple that might change your day, but you are not clicking, you are not listening. You were just asking, waiting for your time to answer, or just to be polite.
Yeah.
So taking that moment to listen, even in the podcast, sometimes that idea that we said about don't let the ball drop in a conversation. I'm becoming more relaxed about it. That a moment of silence sometimes is all we need.
It's so beneficial.
the power of pause. You know, just having that moment. And sometimes it's awkward, but there's a beautifulness in having awkward moments, right? You sit there and you're both silent, and you're like, oh, okay.
But it's
Challenging
only ever awkward based on like your own like interpretation of that, right? Like I could sit here and I could be like, but I don't find it awkward.
No,
I
that
love
was
it.
quite nice.
Yeah.
You know, like I enjoy it. Like I can sit with some of my friends and we don't even have to say a word to each other. It's just nice being in each other's presence.
Yeah.
You know, like again, it comes back to the fact that we're like so disconnected from our bodies and we're so like intellectualized. Like we've been conditioned in a society to believe that like we have to do in order to achieve. We have to go through the system that's set up for ourselves in order to get somewhere and be something and like feel a sense of purpose or like, and like that's part of the reason why I ended up just like stopping all of that and just did what felt good for me, right? Because like I remember specifically, I mean, I have a background in hospitality. Like I worked 10 years in hospitality, right?
That fries your nervous system.
Totally. Yeah. And there was a point I stood in Queen Street in Auckland and I stood at the lights and I was waiting for them to turn green. And I remember being like, looking at everyone and I was like, I wonder if people are happy. I wonder if they're doing like what they love or if they're just doing what they've been told to do by like a system which wants them to do that. Like I wonder if someone's like gonna walk into that office and feel like, yeah, fuck yes, I'm doing the best thing that I love in the entire world. And some people will be because some people love that and that's amazing, you know. But like I was like, I don't want to like get to fucking like 65, retire and then like die and feel like I haven't like done anything for myself, like or anything that I feel like is of importance and value to me that's living in my life purpose. You know what I mean? Like fuck what everyone else says. Like I want to go out there and I want to actually serve the way that I'm supposed to serve.
I like what you're saying because my social media, it's so all over, you know, like it looks like those places in the shopping mall that has all the options of foods because we're talking to so many people and interacting with so many different characters. So my social media is all over. But so every now and then there's the classic CEO mindset, and they often say you gotta trick your mind. I'm like, but then you're tricking yourself if you're not careful. Then you're gonna trick yourself to do something that you don't love. But like time, you're not tricking time. You are aging. You are getting older. You might, you know what I mean? So like even with those skills, you gotta be careful with the wording that you use. Not just trick yourself to work hard and love working hard. I'm like, yeah, but you're missing the part of, but you gotta do what you love. Yeah. Because if you're just going to trick yourself to do crap shit for money, then you're going to be miserable with money, right?
Totally. But even like doing something that I love, I have to be mindful about how much I'm doing. Like again, like if I get caught up within like constantly feeling like I need to do things in order to succeed, I'm no different than working, doing what I was before. Because I'm still in that same frame of mind that tells me that in order to achieve, I must do X, Y, and Z to feel fulfilled, to be recognized, to be validated, to be all of these things, which like most people typically feel, right? Like they feel like they have to get to a point and then they'll be like validated or recognized or like they'll have a purpose or something will be fulfilled. And that's not the case. It comes from like your internal structure. It comes from your relationship to yourself. Like, and so that's why in my business, I also have to prioritize, and it's part of like the embodiment process ensuring that I am sitting with myself, managing my nervous system, making sure that I'm taking time out for my own mental health, making sure that like that I pause, that I take a break, that I'm like aware of like, oh, like I see where I'm going here, or I said like, okay, let's just turn that around and like bring that back. Because like if you're not being, you're not present. Right? Like you're not listening to people, you're not enjoying the environment or the space that you're in, you're not tasting the food or you know, it's simple, it's literally about simple pleasures in life. Like you have to become aware of enjoying those, otherwise you get caught up in this race that doesn't end. The only end is when you end up ending. And then you're like, I still don't feel like I've got there. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because there's no destination. Yeah. The destination isn't here. The destination is in your internal relationship and your internal structure and the pillars that support you. Right?
Woo-hoo, here we go, baby. Are you right there, JT? Having fun with those sunnies? Looking beautiful, my man. Look at Papa.
I almost went, like he said, zoned out.
Yeah, put the mic on, bro. Turn your mic on. Talk to us.
Yeah.
gotta learn the ropes.
There we are, brother. Yeah. I was really engaged and almost went to that blank zone again. So I talked to myself. Jason, breathe.
Jason, you are
a lot of that during the show.
For the people listening to us, JT Tahatika is a massive, amazing artist who is now obviously it's been part of the Altbays team and Coromine team. JT very prolific with his artwork and a lot of discipline that involves JT. I know that it's a lot of fun, so maybe the discipline doesn't come as something that clear for you, but like, how do you see that? Because is it like art for you? Like you gotta get it out. That's how I feel like about you sometimes because you do so much. Yeah. And I'm like, it's like, what is going on? Does he need to do that because it's just his brain? Like, I gotta do it. How does that work for you?
Yeah, it does. It starts with the image in my head, and if I don't get it out, I don't sleep well either. I'm constantly thinking of it. Like I've got the end, I can see the finished result, but I can't physically show it to people. So, yeah, it's got to come out. So there is a lot of odd times where I'll be up at 2 a.m. Right, let's finish this, Jace. You got it. And since the accident, I have dreams, but I don't remember them. And a lot of my art would come finished, complete in my dream, and I could get up and go straight from the moment I wake up, grab a pencil and go, bam, I know what I'm doing. So now it's been constant jamming in there that I have to get it out because I'm not getting the answers from the dreams either. So it's been, it's just something we've got to do, brother. Otherwise, it clogs up.
Thanks for sharing, bro. Legends. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, man. That's what you just said, you know, like all the process, the good and the bad, that balance on how you're using, how you making that purposeful for your life, even with the arts. You know, I see myself caught up on that as well. I'm a drummer, so I know there's going to be a gig, and then there's a whole preparation for that. Some people don't understand when I say, I need some time for myself before the show. I need to get in the room. I need to stretch. We play punk rock, and it's wild, and it's hard, and it's heavy, but like, I don't tap into that rock and roller lifestyle of like, we're gonna like I need my time and I gotta work in my mindset that like the whole journey is fun, Leo.
Yes.
You know, like the whole
enjoy that moment
thing
in between.
is fun here. You know, the sound check is fun. It's tiring because we're driving, we're going, but like when I'm on stage sometimes and then suddenly I feel a bit tired and I'm like, oh fuck, I hope this ends, you know? And I'm like, whoa, wait. I just built up to this moment. So I have to remind myself that the whole thing is fun. And I got to be enjoying that as well.
Without getting caught up within toxic positivity, though.
I like that. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Like toxic positivity is I guess the concept of being like everything has to be good all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's also okay to like feel like you want to leave. It's also okay to feel like angry and frustrated at the fact that when you can't like figure out your artwork and then you have like dreams that would complete that and you don't have those dreams now, like recognizing that you feel frustrated and actually like working with that anger, working with that frustration, like like how is the process that we like learn to integrate and deal with these emotions, right? Because like we shame so many of them, like unless it's sometimes like, oh, I have to enjoy this, or I have to, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but like just typically sometimes we can get like caught up within that toxic positivity, and again that's another form of suppression. We have to feel like we have to be a certain way. What happens if I just fucking felt that anger and I just raged and I just like punched a pillow and I just got frustrated and I was just angry and I just allowed myself to be in that.
Allow yourself to be. Once again, coming back to just being happy or being angry.
Yeah.
You know, not trying to sway one way or the other way. And just before the show started, we're obviously talking, obviously JT and yourself have both had long-term concussions, right? And, just a bit of kind of perspective there. With your concussion and the fact that it took you, a considerable amount of time to kind of process that, how have you integrated that? Did that teach you things or?
Yeah, so much. Like, I feel like from the assault and going into like a concussion is something that I don't even know how to describe. Yeah. Like it's crazy, right? But like there was like this switch in me from having that concussion that made my survival mechanisms go into overdrive.
Yeah.
So everything was about surviving. I was like, if I don't do this right now, my business is not going to succeed. I am going to fail. I am not going to have money. I am not going to do this. I'm not going to have that. I'm like, it was this cycle of feeling like I had to do, which is exactly the opposite of being. And what I also support people in, guide people with. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating because I still see that little survivor in there, that survival little mechanism that rears its head every now and then. And I have to acknowledge that if I am to continue down this path of surviving, all I'm leading myself to is more exhaustion, more fatigue, more adrenal fatigue, which is very hard to come back from. I'm dysregulating my nervous system. People don't realize how much support and nurture and love your nervous system needs. Like people think that like if they take a day off and they like sit in front of the TV and they just like relax and switch their brain off, like that'll be enough. No, honey, it won't be. Like, let me tell you, it takes time. And I've had to find this beautiful balance between going, cool, let me allocate like an hour of time and space to doing this work and feeling like I'm being productive. And then let me allocate like an hour of space and time to sitting and breathing and being and doing something which feels really nourishing for myself. That's going to support that productivity. And that's also going to support my nervous system and support myself on a somatic level, and help me integrate and deal with the trauma and the process that my body is moving through.
Wow.
Going deep, Blair.
Be and do. I love it.
I know you do. I know you do. When it comes to business, bro.
Yeah.
How do you set your mind to, because you were just saying that, you're going to get the business. So you run different things, right? You're involved with different projects. So I would say different revenues and different ways that you're surviving, that you're doing your thing. How do you structure?
That I'm thriving.
That you're thriving, bitch. How do you plan your day, your time, and how is the mindset there for these are the things that I'm going to do? I might try this. I have time for this. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
How are you doing? What's your age? Sorry, do you mind?
No, that's okay. I'm 28.
28.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, I am like a manifesting generator in human design, which basically like means that I'm a very creative person and have lots of ideas and always want to like bring those ideas to fruition. But as I could equally pick them up and put them back down like within like a split second or two, which means that I also have to be very mindful about how much I put on my plate. Otherwise, I do end up overwhelming my system. So, I mean, I have my sort of neurosomatics side of things that also like plays into Twerkwerk, but Twerkwerk's its own entity as well. And then I also like help support other businesses and different things as well as what they're doing. And then I see like one-on-one clients, and then I do sort of like some corporate stuff where I go in and do like wellness, and then I also run retreats too, right? So there's a whole lot of different things that like are on my plate, but I typically, what I've come to in my present reality, and this could change because things are constantly changing, but what works for me now is I typically tend to allocate certain days to certain things. So it could be like I have a Twerkwerk retreat coming up in November where I'm training facilitators to then take it into their cities and do things like that. And so, but I'll spend like Wednesdays typically on like all my Twerkwerk stuff. So I'll be like, cool, this is like the day where I'll like create content, and I'll also work on like the manuals for the Twerkwerk facilitators retreat. And I'll also sort out anything and everything to do with that. And then like, if I need to like do some things elsewhere, I'll kind of have it on like another day somewhere where I can like soak up stuff with the sponge or whatever, you know? And then I might have like 2 or 3 days of like my own neurosomatic work, or like there will typically be like 1 or 2 days where I'm seeing like clients. I'll be like, cool, like a Monday and Tuesday I'm seeing clients, a Wednesday I'm focusing on Twerkwerk, Thursday I'm helping support these businesses, Friday I'm doing this. And all in amongst that, I have hour by hour working with like, cool, productivity, rest and digest. Productivity, rest and digest. Or I might go like 2 hours of productivity and then my body's going to communicate with me, but you need a rest. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Sweet. I hear you. I'm listening to you. Amazing.
I'm trying to tap into that because we're doing so much. There are so many things going on. And then it's easy to put all the hours into the work. But then when you look from outside, you realize that not those hours were productive. Maybe if I had stopped, I would have been more productive in those 2 or 3 hours that I should be working on. Because when I focus, I am focused. But sometimes anything becomes a distraction, or I'm just not there, but I'm still sitting there. So I feel like that's what I'm trying to work on at the moment. Make the time that I sit productive, and that's the time for there's no getting a coffee, no doing this, no checking the social media, no. Because I'm one of those person that if something comes up, it becomes my priority. I stop what I'm doing to get that done. I admire people who don't do that. But because I do production as well, from what we're doing, I'm the production side of things. So sometimes something is priority. Adam coming to town and asking for his number and making sure that everything is okay is a priority because you're the guest. So I have to stop. But if my brain is in that bracket and I can just focus on something, I'm much more productive.
It's efficiency versus effectiveness, right? It's like sometimes we can do heaps of things, but what did we do? Versus like we could do one thing and we could do it really well. And it could be like, cool, like I've got that entire thing done. But again, it also comes back to the nervous system. It really does. Like, I don't think that people understand that in order to be productive to the level that you wish or that you desire, is that you have to like heal past experiences that are like blocking potentially you moving forward because of whatever self-sabotaging reasons that you have. And also the fact that in order to be productive, you do have to rest. If you are constantly trying to be productive, again, you're just leading yourself down a path of exhaustion. Then you're exhausted, and then you'll get to a point where your body says, we need a rest.
I'm gonna
And
make
then
you sick.
and then you don't listen, and then your body says, cool, we're going to make you sick. And then if you don't listen, then your body says, cool, we're going to break a bone. And then if you don't listen, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. Because you're literally not listening.
And you're not even mentioning how miserable we make other people's lives in that process.
Absolutely.
Because as we're damaging ourselves, we're being dicks to a lot of people.
And create unnecessary worry. I mean, I get to the stage where I'll just zone out and I get so exhausted, I basically just cut everyone out for 24 hours or whatever. And it's actually really bad for people that care for me because, like my mum or someone might be able to try to get in contact with me and I'm just like a no-go zone, but sometimes I have to do that because I've overhyped my nervous system. And once again, it's like I've learned over the years how to regulate my nervous system, but I still a lot of times fail because I get too caught up in the doing, right? And then it's like, that's why I love what you say about, and I come back to, like, for me, it's like doing and being, rest and digest, and then you do your work and then you have that balance to keep that nervous system regulated. It's so important, huh?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I feel like, again, people just don't acknowledge that if you actually, there's more progression in actually healing than there is in trying to be productive. Like there's more progression in being in a state of calmness. I mean, like even if you look at like stress hormones and like you look at when you're incredibly stressed, like your IQ drops, right? Like your decision making skills are a lot shitter than what they were if you're in a calmer state. It's something that I would take my team through when I was working in like hospitality. It's like if you feel stressed and you're doing this task, typically when you fuck it up, it's going to take you 20 minutes to rectify it versus if you took a few moments to just regulate or be or take some breaths or like whatever it might be for people. Then you go to the task and you're like, oh wow, I didn't fuck it up. It didn't take an extra 20 minutes on top of my plate. Right? Like people need to begin to realize that there has to be this shift. And that society isn't going to the system isn't going to create that shift for us. We have to create that shift for ourselves. And we can't rely on everyone else to create that shift. We have to be the people that create that shift. And then for the collective to also recognize that that shift is occurring and it's okay to occur. And then that shift happens, right? But like we can't rely on everyone else to do everything for us. Like it just doesn't happen.
Beautiful.
I like that. This is cool, man. This is like nutritional conversation with nutritional value. That's how I call it. This is fun. I feel like we won't make justice to your business. I know that Blair said a few times that he's getting old and things are hard to move, but I feel like you gotta take us through at least the starter pack of a good twerking stress relief. Let's say like first move, beginners. Consider us like zero beginners, no knowledge. Can you give us some tips on a little bit of breathing and a little bit of moving?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I can do that. So I will take you through the breath first.
Okay.
While we're seated, and we're just going to we're going to breathe in through the nose.
Okay.
And we're going to breathe out through the nose. And we're going to breathe in through the nose. And out through the nose. So we got that. We know how to do that? Mm-hmm. Cool. Amazing. Cool. So when we put it in movement, can we stand up?
JT, you can join us if you want to, bro. You don't have to come in front of the camera. But you can. You guys can leave the headphones.
Come on, JT.
Okay.
Off. It's okay. We're still here. I am my man. Yeah. Yes.
So just for basic basic movements. Let's just tilt our pelvis, right? So it's almost like what we're going to do is we're going to rock it forward and we're going to rock it back.
Let me get this chair out of the way so I can still see what we're doing. Is that it, Taylor? All to the end here. A bit more. We're going to do it right. Can you stay here? Yeah? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so you're going to imagine that there is like a pole in between like your hips that's like basically keeping your back and your butt, your booty and your back are like separate. Okay?
Okay, cool.
But what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze the pelvic floor. So can everyone just like squeeze their butt cheeks, squeeze the pelvic floor, squeeze everything together and then release it. Squeeze and release.
Great.
Squeeze
Taylor came for that part.
and release.
Great, Taylor.
Okay?
Good timing.
Squeeze and release. And this is really great for like, you know.
Feels good, must say.
What you're going to
It's
do
falling out, so that's good.
is you're going to like slightly bend your knees, right? So just slightly bend them, like get a little loose, like just let it go.
Let it go.
And then you're going to just gently, as you squeeze in, you're going to pull the pelvis forward. Almost like you're thrusting it forward.
Yeah.
And then as you like unsqueeze, as you release, you're just pushing it back. And back.
I see.
I see.
And out. In and out. And what you do is then you pair it with the breath. So you go,
Why you're laughing?
I'm not laughing. I just enjoying it. I just like amazing. This is great. Yeah.
3 straight thrust.
So that's like how you do that.
Right.
Cool. And then, should we see if we can get into a little?
Man, of course, we're here.
So we can like widen our legs just a little bit more, and we're gonna bend them.
So I don't know if I'm
We're gonna bend them,
Yeah.
and what you can do is you can like support yourself with your hands,
Yeah.
and you're doing exactly the same thing. So you're squeezing in, keeping your back like straight, and then out. In, out. In, out. In.
Yeah,
like it. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Like,
Damn.
so you're kind of straightening the back and then just gently like releasing it. Squeeze, release. Squeeze, release.
And I guess I believe you're getting to some rhythm there, right?
Yeah, and then you do it with music, and then it's rhythmic, and you've got it to the beat, and then you can just speed it up. But that's just like if there's people that are like out there that just want to try it, you're welcome. Just typically just moving like this is a really great way to just start.
I was almost sweating already. Damn! All these years, I thought I was doing it right. Had no clue.
Yeah. And I guess the breathing as well, the breathing out and in, it allows that movement, I guess you open up more.
Yeah.
You become more freer through that area.
So when you have like breath added to it, it really just allows again that sort of like safety within the body and allows for you feel more receptive and more open. Yeah. Yeah.
That's us, Blair. Next party. That's us, baby.
Yeah, Saturday night.
And Adam is facilitating the course, man. So maybe that's us even more. We bring it to Fitzyounger. We bring Twerkwerk to Fitzyounger.
We actually should.
Yeah, we should. Like, I've actually had people who are like, "Oh, are you coming to the Coromandel?" But I need to actually organise it. Again, this is the reason why I've got the Twerkwerk Facilitators Retreat.
Yes.
Because I've travelled the entire country with my co-choreographer Zoe, who is an amazing person as well. And like her and I, we travelled the country, and I was holding a bunch of different sessions, including Twerkwerk, and there was so much positive feedback from it. And then people were like, "When are you coming back?" And I was like, I don't know. Because like I can't circle around the country like 12 months per. I mean, I can, but like, you know, it's not necessarily like what I want to do. I want to be able to help people support their communities and support themselves, and like, you know, be able to facilitate and create those connections within their communities, and build up the confidence and build up the sense of like self-love and body love. And I feel like we hold a lot of shame around the body as well. And so this is the importance of those things. So yeah.
Well, even just letting go, because we talked, you know, earlier on about no judgment in the space, but even just getting up there and being like, I'm actually doing this.
Yeah.
You know?
The whole world.
Yeah.
By the way, before you forget, it will be used against you in 15 years. Blair? No way. This is cool, man. But also that ability to not giving a fuck, eh?
Yeah.
Totally.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
The only person who's often judging you is like yourself, and anyone who is judging you, I always say judgment is an unwillingness to accept or express that part of yourself.
Yes.
Say that again, please. No. Kids, are you taking notes?
Judgment is an unwillingness to accept or express that part of yourself.
How do we find your work? How do we get in touch, Adam?
You can find me on Instagram, Twerkwerk NZ. Otherwise, you can find me on my main profile as well. I mean, they're both my profiles, but Adam T. Robertson. Twerkwerknz.com, which is the website. You can find Facebook. Mainly those three resources, social media and the website. Yeah.
And obviously we'll tag you, and your name is everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll bring you back, and maybe we can plan something like that, like facilitate a little session in the Coromandel. That would be cool.
That would be really cool. Yeah,
make it work.
Get people outside of their comfort zone and feeling more positive in themselves.
100%.
Beautiful. Some words there, Blair, before we close it?
No, just that spoke to my heart. So thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Blue Ginger, thanks for that beautiful Kai. Was that good?
So good.
Hey, man, that got us ready for that twerking session, man. Must say, Blue Ginger, beautiful fusion restaurants in town. So if you are coming to the Coromandel, now is the high season, is the time to come and have some fun and have some good food. BlueGinger.co.nz was on our screen throughout the show, and also Peninsula Motel. Fred, my man, thank you so much. Hey,
he's the man.
How is that motel room? All good?
Right. Yeah. Been good.
Thank you so much, Fred. So if you are coming to the Coromandel and you're going to go to Blue Ginger, you're going to need your accommodation sorted. So make sure to go to Peninsula Motel number 93 Albert Street. They are all like, they have the accessibility thing on the beautiful rooms, and it's all ready for you. Thank you so much, my friends. Next week's a very special one. We have on Tuesday a couple of things that I have to say, right, Taylor? So first of all, there you go. Flock Media Group publishes the beautiful Coromind magazine. Can you see it there, Papa? Am I all good? The Coromind magazine, free monthly magazine delivered in the whole Coromandel. If you are not in the Coromandel, you can still read it online or even listen to the audio version. Okay, it's always a beautiful cover. We invite amazing local artists, and I just wanted to talk about Shane Walker. He's the man. He's from Waihee Beach. He does some big murals, and he graced us with this beautiful Kiwiana cover. So make sure to, they're flying. They're actually going very fast. It's going to be hard to find them in a few days, but if you're lucky to get hold of one, lucky you. And if you are a smart business, invest in something that is from the community and to the community, and that looks cool because it sits at places and is not disposable, so your ad lasts. And I'm not a businessman, but I can sell my shit, bitch. JT, the man, beautiful artist. Make sure to check him out. JT Tahatika Hollywood. Am I saying it right? On Instagram, HORIWOOD. Got it right. Thank you, my bro. Always bringing beautiful artwork to our studio. We're stoked to have some pieces from the man. Next week, we are live on Tuesday with Pauline and Stan from the local The Informer, our newspaper from the Coromandel. So that will be a good chat, and it will be an exception. We're going live on Wednesday instead of Thursday because Mr. Hori is in town. Yeah, land back. So he's coming to our show, and it's going to be a good one. Gentlemen, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kakite.
Ka kite.
Nice.